Okay, so let's talk about some Mythic Plus tech today. We're going to be going over some of the things that you can utilize inside of your Mythic Plus dungeons that's actually pretty valuable. That will help you be a little bit more consistent with very specific mechanics. First and foremost, whenever we're talking about tech, let's talk about something that ended up getting fixed that was pretty commonly used. I noticed this whenever I was doing my runs, but I thought that there was no way that they would patch it like this. So what Kess tweeted out was PSA. It looks like an undocumented change. Make it so where you can no longer rescue skip Dark Exile on the last boss in Necrotic Wake. And it appears that Augmentation Evokers will no longer get sent down unless a DPS is currently in the down phase. Not sure exactly how the second part works yet, but yeah, so good luck on the shields. So basically what happens is your animation locked and you can no longer rescue targets who are targeted with the Dark Exile mechanic on the last boss in Necrotic Wake. This doesn't let you use that projectile movement speed to be able to skip that Dark Exile cast anymore. I'm not aware if Gateway or Life Grip work on it still. I haven't tested that. But this is definitely something that is going to be changed. There was a lot of instances where it would be me, a healer, and a tank as the only three people that were upstairs as it currently stands, and then we would wipe to the shield on Nalthor because we don't have enough damage to be able to break the shield. Now there's a serious question as to whether or not your Augmentation Evoker is supposed to zone out in respect to Devastation before the last boss. Like, what are you realistically supposed to do about this? In addition to that, it appears that Augs no longer get sent down unless a DPS is currently in the down phase. So this is trying to combat a couple of different things. First and foremost, Augs have a really hard time of just like killing that ad that's in the downstairs phase. Now, it's not that the Aug will never get sent down, it's that it'll get sent down less often, which means that it's just going to be the Aug plus like one DPS as the only people who are upstairs, which is the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that the Aug is the only person who's downstairs and they're able to kill their ad. That would be like the best case scenario, meaning that you could actually continue to break the shield. And so Augmentation still continues to have a really weird design space on this fight. Hopefully this just shows that there's going to be more changes to this boss coming in the next couple of weeks, because this fight is, I would describe it as one of the worst design fights for Mythic Plus. You know, you have players that are constantly getting sent down on a timer, that have to fight a constantly respawning ad, and the boss will shield itself, and only a few people have to be upstairs or can be upstairs and break that shield at once. Particularly sometimes one DPS, a tank, and one healer, which means that the shield in some instances can become unbreakable. So if you're playing Aug and you don't want to zone out and go dev, in theory you should probably be looking to get a Mad Queen's Mandate. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that I have noticed this week. So I was watching some of the Chinese VODs, and I noticed something that was kind of weird whenever they were doing City of Threads. And just I hope you noticed this right here. And if you kind of blinked, you probably missed it. The Eye of the Queen actually spawned at 91% HP, and I was really confused because it looked like, you know, it was just the warrior that was charging this Eye of the Queen. They were kind of standing around for half a second, and then the mob spawned at 91%. And then I was like, that was weird. And so then I went and looked at their other Eye of the Queen attempts whenever they would pull the other ones. And I was sitting here and I was watching, and lo and behold, the warrior charges the Eye of the Queen again. And I was like, oh, this is so weird. Look. That Eye of the Queen spawned at 90% HP. And so that got me thinking, like, how does this even work? Are they hitting it with like some hard hitting ability to begin with? Is it something with charge maybe? And so then I went into Mythic Plus. We tried it with Tempest. It didn't do anything. We tried it with Charge. It also didn't do anything, because why would it? That doesn't really make any sense. And then I ended up going into an M0 run with some friends. We also pulled up the logs of the Chinese run and realized that it was Abyssal Gluttony on the Resident. So basically what's going on is the Augmentation Evoker from this group is pressing their Mad Queen's Mandate trinket on this Halifal Resident. So you can see he's walking up right here. He starts casting that Mad Queen's Mandate on the mob. And then how it works is most abilities, now it doesn't actually work for Tempest, which is why whenever I was testing with some friends at first, it didn't work. But most abilities do some damage to the Halifal Resident prior to it spawning into the Eye of the Queen. The Halifal Resident has a lot different or a lot less HP than this Eye of the Queen. But the damage that you do to the Halifal Resident will put the Eye of the Queen at the same HP that the Halifal Resident was at, with a cap of 90%. And so you want basically your hardest hitting single target ability here to be used on this Halifal Resident to get the Eye of the Queen to spawn at 90% HP. The best ability in theory would be like Mad Queen's Mandate. Mad Queen's Mandate hits for probably like 6 or 7 million in most instances. But for this, it's effectively doing about 20 million HP to the mini boss by getting it to 90% HP. So it is the most effective global that you can realistically use on that. And so that's a way to actually speed up this mini game just a little bit. You know, you get 10% of HP off these Eyes of the Queen, and I think this is a cool piece of tech. Another cool piece of tech in City of Threads involves Jetstream. So we talked in the last tip video about Jetstream and how you could actually break out of the Tyranid villagers stun with the Jetstream root removal. Now, if you've ever done this boss, the second boss of City of Threads, you notice that you get these icicles that are penetrating and end up slowing people, and they actually put a pretty steep dot onto players. While these icicles are going off as well, what you need to know about the icicles is that, like, the Duskbringer is going off, you can also get bled. And so you're taking a ton of damage here, which is why it's really important to be pressing defensives at the exact same time. We'll also drop like AMZ and whatnot. Now, what you see here is we are debuffed by these icicles, which is fine. It makes sense. You know, you end up having this 10-second dot that's attached to a slow. The key point here is that it's attached to a slow. So if you have Jetstream Totem or the ability to just like freedom people, and it works kind of similar, it actually removes that dot off of your player. And so we drop the Windrush Totem with the Jetstream Talented. Everybody walks into that Windrush Totem, and then it gets removed. You can also mass dispel it. It's a dispellable effect as well. But getting that dot off of players is actually very valuable, and it's why you're seeing a lot of shamans playing that Jetstream Talent and dropping this Windrush Totem in this dungeon. Next up, we have another piece of tech in Necrotic Wake. So with priests becoming a lot more popular inside of high keys, you've actually seen the resurgence of Fleshcrafter technology, especially in the upper edge of the Necropolis. So let's kind of talk about how this Fleshcrafter works. So to progress the gauntlet in the upstairs Necropolis area of Necrotic Wake, you actually have to have all of the trash killed off. This is fairly standard for any trash gauntlet. This doesn't count mobs that are mind controlled. And so what you'll see teams do is they'll bring a priest into this dungeon, and they will constantly mind control this flesh crafter in order to be able to progress the RP of this area. What this then allows them to do is continue to have the ability to be able to throw cleaver mobs over and over again. Throw cleaver does a large amount of... Oh my gosh, Dorky died. Throw cleaver does a large amount of friendly fire damage to players, but the coordination check on this is actually relatively high, as you saw right there. If you don't get the CC at the right time, your Balanced Druid can lose their 40 stack of Spy Masters and be in complete, utter despair. But having access to that actually allows you to speed up bosses and trash by a substantial amount, to the point where if we skip to the like Surgeon Stitchflesh or whatever, and they have this Fleshcrafter alive, they continue to get these throw cleavers on the boss. So say Surgeon Stitchflesh ends up getting hit by this Fleshcrafter's throw cleaver here in 7 seconds. Let's just see how much damage it does to it. Bang, the cleaver hits. It does 50 million health off the boss. And I've seen Nalthor be somewhere around 2 minutes with this. It also helps you break the shields on Nalthor. Now, the cost of this, of course, is an incredible amount of coordination. You see they're utilizing roots. They're also utilizing Hex to make sure that people aren't getting completely owned. You need to make sure that your positioning is really solid. There's a lot of positioning that is required with this, but it does speed up this dungeon by a lot. Next piece of tech, it's going to involve Grim Batol, probably the hardest key on the season. And the third boss of Grim Batol is not something that's particularly easy. You have to kill a bunch of ads. There's a knockback that happens relatively frequently. You have to dodge a lot of tornadoes, which can reduce a large amount of uptime on this boss. I know as like a ranged DPS player, I'll end up canceling a lot of casts to having to move out of the way of tornadoes. I've seen a lot of melee DPS get boxed off the boss and not be able to hit the boss due to the ads that are walking towards them. Now, there's a specific spot that you can tank the boss in, which most of these things end up being alleviated by a lot. And now it comes down to actually using the terrain of the room in a very specific manner. What we saw very early on in the season is if you tank the boss against the wall, it kind of worked in a similar fashion. But now there is a cubby that you can tank the boss in, and you can see Trell right there dragging the boss all the way into that cubby. And what happens is, first and foremost, ideally the tornadoes don't spawn in a pattern that can hit the tank, although they can hit the tank sometimes. The tank is going to have to tank the frontal of the boss, which is very scary. But melee DPS in theory should never have to run away from the tornadoes. Range DPS should never have to dodge the tornadoes, and these ads that you're seeing on screen right here spawn perfectly stacked in the hitbox of the boss, meaning that these 5 million HP ads get completely nuked down and it decreases the kill time of this boss by about a minute. So it's incredibly valuable to do. It's also very easy to pull off, not technically intensive like some of the other stuff that we've been saying. Last tip that I have for this week's video. We're going to be talking about the last boss of Stonevault, Void Speaker Eirik. And so how this works is, so this can happen in one of two ways. First off, you can have an immunity, or you can have like AMS, and then the Void debuff can avoid going onto players. This lets you only have to go through 2 waves of 2 portal spawns, which means that you get all of these Void debuffs cleared off of your entire 5 stack much faster, right? Basically 1 portal spawn faster. The alternative way of being able to do this is if you rescue a player as an Aug Evoker into the range of the portal, and you guys contact the edge of that suck portal at the exact same time, it will remove both debuffs off of your players. Again, kind of achieving the exact same thing. So what my group will do here with DK and Aug Evoker is we'll rotate AMS and Rescue on every other set. Then that reduces the amount of HPS that's required. So right there, I rescue the Resto Shaman. Typically, I end up picking the portal that is the furthest away from melee or has the most treacherous path away from melee to allow them to have an easier time of like dropping them off on the other side. So you see right here, our DK just like walked over here and dropped it off. And then now there's only 2 portals that need to be dropped off, and the Enhancement Shaman and the Prot Warrior are just gonna go and deposit those. And now we're done with that mechanic, and it actually decreases the amount of time that player's gonna have the debuff. It allows your healer to do a little bit more DPS as well, and in general it just makes for a much safer and cleaner encounter. That's going to be it for me today with some of the tips that I've been seeing from Mythic Plus. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.